Hi, my name's Carolia from the Yoga Lunchbox, and today I'm speaking with Jonni Pollard. He is a Vedic meditation teacher, and he's also a co-founder of One Giant Mind. And we're here to talk about meditation. Welcome, Jonni.
So great to be on the show.
It's nice to have you here. I'd like to jump straight to the chase because this is primarily going out to the Yoga Lunchbox audience. I'm going to presume that people understand what meditation is. However, even in a yoga audience, people might not know what a Vedic meditation teacher is. So can you explain to us the word Vedic and where that comes from?
So the word Vedic comes from the Sanskrit word Ved, which translates to knowledge of or to know. The Vedic tradition is a tradition dedicated to the science of consciousness or the science of unfolding one's capacity to know. All that there is to know. The Vedic tradition, which is the tradition in which yoga, the science of yoga, derived, held as a fundamental precept that the foundation of our existence, the primary quality of existence, is consciousness, is an awareness state. And so what we are is primarily an awareness state. So the very foundation, the very function of the foundation of our existence is knowingness. And so the Vedic tradition is dedicated to the science of how to unfold one's capacity to know oneself as this fundamental, unbounded, infinite cosmic intelligence that is known as the self with a capital S, or it's otherwise described as the Ved, the self knowing the self. It's a stratum of awareness within creation that is knowable as the self, where the self is interacting with the self and knowing the self as the self knowing the self. So it sounds abstract. You can hear that one a couple of times if you like, but it's an extraordinary thing to consider. And so Vedic meditation is just a loose term that describes a mental process that enables an individual to effortlessly lead their awareness into subtler stratum of awareness, a subtler stratum of thinking, until ultimately one arrives at this foundational experience of the self known as being. And being is the self minus thinking. And the experience is this pure unbounded awareness state that when experienced initially, one isn't able to recognize or identify that one is having the experience. Because when you're having the experience, there is no thought. And if there's no thought, there is no capacity to reflect on the experience one is having. It's pure awareness, innocent awareness, present moment. And it's only when one moves out of that state and moves into a more relative position is one able to go, oh, I just had an experience. I wasn't thinking, yet I was aware. And only in retrospect, one can look back and go, okay, I just had that experience of unboundedness. Whilst one's having the experience of unboundedness, they're not aware of it because it's featureless, it's unbounded. There's no other, there's no self in terms of interaction. It's just one whole indivisible awareness state. And because there's no other, it's featureless, and therefore there's no interaction. It's only when we come out of it, we emerge out of the depths of being, that we can look back and reflect upon it and go, I just had an experience of unbounded transcendence. And so Vedic meditation is a technique that enables you to have that experience, which is very valuable in the process of expanding consciousness and acquiring the capacity to unfold consciousness.
It sounds very much like a technology
Yes, exactly.
It sounds like a technology to go within and to go down. There's a couple of things I want to pull out from that.
Mm-hmm.
One is the difference between knowledge and knowing. Is there a difference? First, is there a difference? And if
Yes.
so, what is it?
Great question. So information is sort of an understanding of something, some principle. Information becomes knowledge when we have a practical application for that information, and knowledge becomes wisdom when we take that knowledge and actually apply it to give us the direct experience of that which the knowledge is applied to. So knowledge and experience in so much as knowledge that pertains to our existence and the way in which the mind works, the way in which consciousness flows, the way in which nature structures itself to maximize its capacity to expand. The difference between knowledge is that one can have an intellectual understanding of how to apply principles desired outcome. Experience is actually the application of that knowledge and being engaged in the present moment, experiencing consciousness expanding as a result of applying that knowledge. Taking the intellectual reckoning, applying it, surrendering, and allowing the experience to unfold. So I would describe that latter part as wisdom. Wisdom is the spontaneous expression of consciousness that is always seeking to balance, elevate, and cause maximum expansion. And if we're to objectively observe what nature is up to, it's that. It's seeking balance, it's seeking elevation, which is evolution. Elevation is always progressively moving into greater states of expansiveness. And that perpetual state of expansiveness is the experience of bliss, where we are feeling that rapture of ever unfolding in our potentiality. And so this is wisdom. Wisdom is spontaneous, and it emerges from our most natural state, which is that unbounded consciousness.
All right, well, that moves nicely into the second bit I wanted to ask. So once we access unbounded consciousness, and you said that when you're in unbounded consciousness, you're not necessarily able to realize it because you're not in conditioned thinking mind. There's no subject object, there's no separation to be able to reflect on where you are.
Correct, initially.
Okay. Well, this is what I wanted to ask. Is there a state that then arises whereby one is able to stay grounded in unbounded awareness while the mind itself is still functioning as a tool, and so there's an ability to move through the world from that place of unboundedness? The mind is thinking, but one is not. Okay, so can you tell me about that?
Yes, so this is actually the desired outcome of practicing Vedic meditation, is the recognition that aham brahmasmi. Aham brahmasmi is I am totality, and totality incorporates the unbounded, infinite, unchanging field of pure consciousness and the relative expression, the manifestation of intent that emerges out of that unboundedness that we perceive to be our individual existence and the material universe. So the material universe is a gradated expression that emerges out of the unboundedness, from subtle into more gross, into most gross, which we are relating on right now. And this is referred to as the karmakand, the level of activity. And that gross state emerges into a more subtle state that is known as the upasnakand, which is the realm of the laws of nature, personified and interacting as intelligence, illuminated intelligence. And then emerging, the upasnakand emerges out of the gyankand, which is this unbounded pure consciousness state that's unchanging. And so we've got these three layers: the unboundedness, which is infinite, featureless, pure consciousness, unchanging, that emerges into a realm that is expressive of all the laws of nature, nature's creative intelligence being expressive in a very pure, subtle state. And then this realm of the pure, subtle state organizing itself in such incredible creative ways that gives rise to gross physical manifestation, which some refer to as the Maya. And Maya is generally referred to as the illusion. The true interpretation from the Vedic perspective, illusion, it means appearance. And it is a field of play. It's a playground by which nature's creative intelligence is expressive. And the role of consciousness from the Vedic perspective, as it pertains to a human experience, the role of a human experience, as far as the evolutionary progressive journey is concerned, is to awaken to the unbounded, unmanifest of the Gyan Khan, the Upasana Khan, which is all the laws of nature, and the Karma Khan, the 3 levels, 3 in 1, to awaken to this reality. That we are simultaneously gross and relative, subtle, and merging with the totality, and the unbounded simultaneously. Can I perceive these 3 layers of my consciousness right now? And so the only way that we can awaken that potentiality is by eliciting a response of transcendence, moving through the layers systematically, going in, coming out, going in, coming out, going in, coming out. Vedic meditation is technology that exposes us, gives us the direct experience of all these subtle layers in consciousness, where we transcend into the absolute and then we come out. We transcend, we come out, we go in and out. And eventually, as a result of going in and out, we become acquainted through direct experience. The brain is imprinted with the subtle impulses and laws and structures in which consciousness is expressive in these different layers. And eventually the outcome is that you awaken to it. You begin to perceive it with the eyes open. The gross unbounded, the subtle, and the gross.
So then with the number of people that are practicing yoga postures, and I want to be specific on that, yoga postures throughout the world.
Asana.
Asana, yeah, say asana. Okay, with that number of people practicing asana, does that mean there is an opportunity for this experience to start unfolding within people, and therefore for the world as a whole to begin to wake up?
Yeah. I mean, the question extends beyond... It extends beyond the individuals just practicing yoga asana. There's a phenomenon happening on the planet right now where consciousness is expanding. The collective consciousness is elevating by law of nature. It's not human dependent. There is something going on within nature that is actually causing human consciousness to expand or elevate. Or become broader in the spectrum of repertoire of response or perception. The fact that more humans are doing yoga asana is an indication that more humans are becoming increasingly sensitive to the impact that life has on the body and therefore the mind. And I think that the increase in popularity of yoga asana is as a response to something that's happening in nature. People are just like, all right, what can I do to alleviate the suffering, to reduce the amount of pressure that I feel in the physiology, and to elicit a state of expansion of awareness? And what we're seeing is a massive influx in popularity of yoga asana, because most of the people that are learning in the West are learning from people in the West that are excluding some of the key components of the yoga system. Meditation being one of them. Not all of them, but most, and people are approaching yoga asana as a stress release activity that also makes me fit and look good. So, but what we're also noticing is a wonderful rapid evolution in that. People have been doing yoga asana for 5, 7, 10, even 15 years now, and go, I'd be a little bit more enlightened than I am, having done all of this asana. I can get my head, both my feet around the back of my neck. I can get into all kinds of strange and wonderful postures, and yet I'm still suffering. I'm still struggling with the same issues. And so what's happening is there is a much deeper inquiry into the practice of yoga, and what they're realizing is, the meditation bit, I've been leaving that bit out. And so what we're seeing now is a wonderful emergence, but even in the yoga community around the world, a much greater interest in the practice of meditation, pranayama as well. Pranayama is a very important component in this process, but also the understanding of why it is we're doing yoga, what it is that we're aspiring to, what the potentiality for human consciousness is. They're questions that are being asked. I mean, you, for example,
yeah. Well, why are we?
Me right now, you're asking me this question.
Why are we doing it?
We're doing it because, well, essentially, for those that are doing it, they're doing it because, out of a choicelessness, because while we have a nature, and that nature is unbounded, and that unboundedness is seeking to be expressive within boundaries, within a relative structure. Our humanity is a relative structure, but at the baseline of our relativity is unboundedness, an infinite pure consciousness state. And so the unboundedness is stirring. It's seeking expression through boundaries. And what's occurring is our boundaries that we have imposed upon ourselves as human beings through our indoctrination and just, cultural legacy are too restrictive for the waves of consciousness that are flowing through our collective consciousness. The waves are rising, and they are breaking down these limitations that are self-imposed by humanity. And the impulses are so great that they're smashing internal paradigms. We're watching people break down. The level of mental illness on the planet, on the planet is at an unprecedented high at the moment. People are experiencing chronic states of depression and anxiety and breakdown. Why? Because what's happening inside of them doesn't correlate with how they were brought up to be. And yet they don't have anything around them yet that can relate to these deeper impulses that are taking place inside of them. They're wanting to be expressive of a deeper spiritual nature, and yet they are surrounded by a society and culture that doesn't reflect that in any way. They don't have a conceptual framework or cultural permission to be expressive of what's taking place inside of them. And as a result, there's a huge disparity or disconnect from this internal reality that they're experiencing, where they want to love unconditionally. They want to be loved. They want to be expressive of love, and they want to be loved. And they want to operate from this higher state. And yet they have been so deeply indoctrinated into this world that believes that says, don't trust, don't be open, be conditional, dog eat dog. Life is about competition. All of it's a paradigm that we've been indoctrinated into, and we're governed by culturally. And so a lot of people are looking at the world going, it's all fucked. And I can't relate, and I don't want to have anything to do with this, and yet I have to in order to survive. And there's great despair to the degree that people are killing themselves. They'd rather opt out from having to be in this body than be in the world, because it's just all too much. And so is that there are those that are seeking out sustainable means and methods to sort of stabilize the experience and learn to bring this internal reality out and be expressive of this internal reality and defy the cultural paradigm of fear and restriction and defensiveness, and learn to break through that and be unconditional in compassion and love and kindness and caring and create things within society that are expressive of this internal reality. And culture, industry, is forming, like the wellness industry is the largest growing industry in the world. It's booming. Why? Because, and it's just an indication of what's going on.
Is there a danger of the wellness industry being co-opted, though, by the conditioned mind to sort of to sort of push the same kind of deceptions of the mind that are causing stress as such?
I mean, I wouldn't call it a danger. Will it happen? Is it happening? Yes, of course. But I see this as a natural evolutionary process where, of course, we're going to appropriate our inner spiritual yearning to be expressive, and we're going to appropriate it to the current model, the system of capitalism and all of that. And some will be very successful in doing that and be innovative through that, and almost like a Trojan horse, create new systems and models within the old system. But utilizing the old system first, we've got to adapt and then transform from the inside out, rather than create a duality system and our new system and all of that. It's nonsense. So, well, I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? But
you can say it's nonsense.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, there could be some value in it for some, in some instances, but at the end of the day, there needs to be this integration and transformation from the inside out. This is the way in which the universe operates, and
so the breaking of the mind per se is symptomatic of a system itself that needs to be seen and changed. It's like symptomatic of a paradigm shift that is happening and needs to happen, and so.
So whatever concern that you were expressing about, us just sort of living old ideologies or ways in which we express ourselves within society and culture in an attempt to express something that's not that, that will occur. However, there will be those that will recognize that and continue forging new frontiers in the way in which we can dissolve or expand those parameters or boundaries that limit what it is we're desiring to express and experience in the world. And, I'm seeing it all around the world. I've got friends that are doing extraordinary things all around the world, that are creating companies, enterprises, social movements, new ways of exchange and trade and, social bonds. And, there's all kinds of extraordinary things, and it's all experimental. All of it has pros and cons, and all of these people are pretty intelligent. They're aware of it. And it's less about trying to nail it or get it right, but more in the experimentation of the implementation and being open to learning about how to change. And the reality is that through this transition period, because everything's going to be changing so much, there'll be no one absolute solution to any one situation. Everything is in flux, including our solutions to the need for change. There'll be no one static idea or ideology that will be an absolute answer to anything that we're doing. The reality is it's just one big creative process that's in a state of flux, that's in response to however it is that we're responding to change. And, we're talking about immense complexity.
Yeah. So let's talk about one experiment that you are running, which is One Giant Mind, right? That is an experiment in essence, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
So where did that concept come from, and how is it rolling out?
Well, I mean, it came from my personal experience of being a meditation teacher and watching the profound impact that Vedic meditation had on the lives of the individuals that I was teaching. And, it's a logical sort of thought to have, how do we take this to scale? The issue with teaching Vedic meditation to scale is that, traditionally it's a one-to-one or a one to a small group of people exercise. The way in which we teach is very traditional, and we keep it very, very exact in the procedure. And so the reality is that, you know, teaching Vedic meditation on scale, it's riddled with challenges, because it's you know, we only teach it face to face. So the challenge was to come up with a procedure that emanates from that process of Vedic meditation, that would give people an introductory experience to the process of transcending. There are a lot of techniques out there that aren't about transcendence. They're about non-directed attention or focus. There are very few programs out there that actually teach you how to transcend. So we created a sort of a generic process of transcendence that derives from the Vedic meditation experience or process. That isn't Vedic meditation. We're very clear about that. You know, in order to learn Vedic meditation, you really need to learn it from a teacher. But what One Giant Mind is an opportunity to learn a process, a mental process that gives you an introduction into the process of transcending and having that experience via a smartphone app.
I downloaded that app today to take a look, and what I noticed first and foremost is that process itself, you don't allow people, no, let's rephrase that, you very mindfully take people on a specific process, as in they have to watch step 1 before it unlocks step 2. And I've only watched step 1, so I didn't even get step 2 unlocked, so I haven't watched the whole thing, right? But then when I browsed through the other steps to see, you know, what's it all about, I couldn't actually go into them.
Yes.
And I'm like, sneaky. You know, like, there's obviously, you know what you're doing there. So, you know,
because absolutely. Yeah. The way in which one learns this process is sequential. And it's so easy. The whole process is so easy. However, it can become confusing if you don't have the right context, the right understanding of the experience that you're having, and contextualizing it to the procedure. So we unpack it in 12 steps, so that at the end of the 12 steps, you're like, I get it, and there's no mistaking, you know, what's going on. So you know that if you download the app and you're using One Giant Mind as an introduction to learning how to meditate, know that you're being expertly guided, and the process is exact. It's very exact, and it pertains to every state of mind. Anyone can learn this process, and built into it is a really comprehensive set of resources and tools. There's a whole video library that after each session that you do, it asks you what your experience was. You click on it and a video comes up, and it gives you much deeper insight about what it is you experienced and why. Then there's a journal, so it enables you to track your experience, and as you proceed, you unlock content, articles, which basically go deeper into certain aspects of consciousness, stress, the mind, all of that. So at the end of the whole 12-step program and then 30-day challenge, because once you do the 12 steps, you get challenged to 30 days of regular, everyday meditation, and that helps you form a habit. At the end of that sort of 42-day period, if you do it iteratively, at the end of it, you get it. You're like, okay, I understand the premise of transcending the nature of the mind and what's going on. And from that point, we hope that you've gotten so into it that you want to go and actually learn with a teacher.
It feels to me like what you've created is, like you say, you can't replicate a teacher through an app. What you can replicate is what a teacher represents, or one of the aspects of a teacher, which is the container. And so through the app, you've actually created a container for the practice to arise.
Yeah.
Which is it's such a beautiful thing, because people get lost. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have the container. They don't have something to literally hold them in place while they progressively go down.
Correct.
How many people are you hoping to have meditating at the end of, say, 7 years through this process?
To be honest with you, we started off with kind of I mean, now we just sort of, we don't do any marketing on it. It's all word of mouth, you know. So we've currently got about only a small amount of people, like maybe 60,000 people around the world using it. But, you know, that's 60,000 people that had heard from somebody. And it's, you know, it's spreading, and there's something about that we really love. It's pretty awesome. And that's just in the last sort of 12 months, or 12 to 18 months. So, you know, that's, I like, that's a lot of people having an experience and going, hey, you should try this app. It's really awesome. And there's no more powerful marketing than testimonial word.
It's heart to heart, right?
So in terms of how many people we want to use the app, as many as possible.
It's gonna
whatever the need is. You know, it's a charity, so it's not a business venture for us. We set it up as a charity. It's just there of service for people that don't have access to a teacher to get access to a very holistic course of how to learn to meditate.
And to close, there's one more thing I want to discuss, because I notice that when you talk about transcending, every time you speak of transcending, what you're actually doing or showing through your body is it's descending. And so you're saying something, but what I'm receiving is something else. And so can you speak to that?
Yeah, so the term transcendence, when it refers to meditation in these times, is really transcending our gross level of awareness, which most people are locked into. We're locked into a perception of reality that primarily identifies with the gross material world as of what we're experiencing. And so what transcendence refers to is the ability to move beyond being rigidly bound by a sensory experience of the gross level of reality and actually move into subtler, less excited states of awareness and experience deeper, more expansive, more abstract states of awareness, which gives us information and insight about the nature of ourselves. However, transcendence isn't, in its purest sense, isn't limited to just the motion of moving inward. Transcendence is the mechanics of reality. There's a Sanskrit word that describes it, nirvartatvam. Nirvartatvam means be where you are not. And so what this describes is the nature of how the relative flow of consciousness moves. The universe is always seeking out where it is not. It's always seeking to fill that space where it is not. And so this is what consciousness is doing, our human consciousness. It's always seeking to be where it's not. And if we are identified with being just an individual structure hanging out in a material universe, then what it is seeking to do is move into its unboundedness so it can identify with its unboundedness. And when it is in a state of unboundedness, what it's seeking to do is to seek out where it is in boundaries. And so it moves back into boundaries. So it's moving into boundaries and then into unboundedness, and then into boundaries and then into unboundedness, into boundaries and unboundedness. This is nirvartatvam. This is the mechanics of the universe. And what is that? It's transcending where it is. So if it's in unboundedness, it's transcending into boundaries. When it's in boundaries, it's transcending into unboundedness. So the word transcendence means that. But in order for us to learn how to have the experience of nirvartatvam, to be always free to seek out where we are not, which is that perpetual motion of expansion, in to first break the bondage, the being bound by the senses hyper-identified with the gross level of reality. We need to learn how to transcend into the subtle, into this quieter, more expansive state where we have the direct experience of our true self, our foundational reality, which is that pure consciousness state that we have the direct experience of through transcendence. It's not just an idea. if any of you are watching this transcend, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And for those of you who don't, then download the app or go and learn Vedic meditation with a teacher, and you'll very quickly come to learn that at the baseline of our experience of individuality is a non-local awareness state that is unbounded. And so when we learn how to transcend like that, then what we start to recognize is, we don't necessarily just want to stay there. We want to move back into boundaries and then out. And then eventually we get so good at it that we exist in boundaries and unbounded simultaneously. And this is what the entry level of enlightenment is about. The first stages of enlightenment, where we can exist uninhibited, we can be unbounded and uninhibited by our boundaries. It's a powerful state.
It is indeed. Now, John, I would love to keep talking to you about that, but I'm mindful of our listeners, so I'm going to call it a wrap at this point. Thank you so much for coming on and literally sharing your embodied experience of Vedic meditation and of those states. Is there anything you'd like to say to close to the people?
Meditate daily. Make the process of confronting fear a sanctified ritual that is an imperative for humanity's evolution. Be courageous in confronting the effect of boundaries and seek to transcend them. Apply whatever technology you can to transcend self-imposed boundaries and be very, very deliberate in the process of expansion. Make a commitment to expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding, because this is where fulfillment lies, and the states of consciousness that give us the wisdom to be able to meet the challenges that we're facing on the planet right now. And just the embodiment of this is enough. Just having the experience of this is enough, and then bringing it into the world with fierce compassion and love and willingness to go beyond our indoctrination and unify with things that seem to be irreconcilable. If we can learn how to reconcile that which is irreconcilable within ourselves and outside of ourselves, this is all that needs to happen.